All right. Hi, we're just starting. Okay, so we're going to be talking about Jupyter Notebooks, but first we'll talk a little bit about virtual environments in Python, and then the Python package system pip. So I've made a handy directory here that's empty. We're going to be using the new Python 3 way of making virtual environments rather than Python 2 where they had a specialized tool for making virtual environments. So I have Python 3 here. Yeah, so we can just look at that. 3.6.5. So the way of doing virtual environments with Python 3 is they have this -m virtual environment, and then you specify the directory. So I'm already in the directory, so I'm just going to do current directory. So it takes a second, but now we've got our things in here, and we can poke around here a little bit just to see what's in here. So this one contains our interpreter. It has pip, and then it has easy install, which helps pip install things, or it can install things itself. And then the activate function is what actually, the activate there is what actually starts the virtual environment. And include is empty. Lib has an interpreter as well. I guess we could figure out which one we're actually using. Oh, not yet. So the environment hasn't started, so it's still looking at the systems Python. So if we start it with that activate thing, now we're in the virtual environment. You can see the Jupyter tutorial on the far left. That's just the name of the directory. And if we leave, it's handy because if you leave the directory, you know you're still in the environment. So that changes. So before we had user bin Python, but now if we see which Python, you can see it's the one in the directory. So if you do Python version, Python 3.6 installed itself into this, into here. So the nice thing about virtual environments is it, like, the reason they're used is it's kind of like giving the project its own office space. So it doesn't have to use the tools other people are using, and it can have all of its own things and its own space. And then if you're going, so say you're testing your project on like a local machine, you can have like isolated environment in which to test, and then when you move it to the machine where you're actually going to be like long-term running the process, it can stay in that isolated environment. So it doesn't rely on the machine. It makes it more flexible. So that's the reason for virtual environments. So we still don't have any Python going on in here. I guess one last thing to look at would be the config. It just kind of describes the environment. The include system site packages equals false means we're not using anything that's actually installed on the system. It's just using everything that's going to be installed into the virtual environment, which we will do now. So since this is about Jupyter Notebooks, we're going to use pip to install them. So pip is the package installer for Python libraries. So if people have made a Python library and they want to make it available, they use the pip. They go through pip. So it's using the pip in our virtual environment, not the system pip, which is another good feature. So then you're using the same installing tool to install the same packages. So pip install is the command. If you ever like forget things, which is very possible, you can just do pip help. And they have tons of different tools, but we're going to just use them, or tons of different options, but we're just going to use the simple install Jupyter. This, usually it'll download them, but since I was testing this, it has a bunch cached on the system, so it just uses those. I was testing. There's an option to say like no cache, so then it'll download them again. if you ever think you're having serious problems, that's a good way to figure out what might be the cause of them. All right, so now that Jupyter is installed, we'll start looking at that. I wonder if I've never done this before. Okay, yeah, so it tells you what version you have. So we have 4.4. And the simplest thing, and a lot of guides will just go straight to this. It's just you can do Jupyter Notebook, and it'll start the notebook, and it'll take you to the notebook page. So the notebook is hosting itself. So it's listening on localhost on port 8888. So then the browser browses to that address or that port. What happened was here is Jupyter automatically opens the browser to that port. But if you accidentally close it, you should just be able to browse back to that in the browser. So what we see in here is the stuff, just the folders that was in our virtual environment, because we haven't actually made a notebook yet. So we can do that here with new. And we'll talk a little bit about why there's like a list here, but we'll use Python 3 for now. So the notebook format is a little bit different than traditional programming with Python. So you can set variables, a equals 3. And so that ran in that cell, and now it exists in the kernel. So the kernel keeps track, just like the operating system kernel, it keeps track of things that are going on in this notebook. So we can, another handy thing is, so you could print A, since we're using 3.6, we need the parentheses. You could print A, or you can just type A, and it'll say what A is. Something that can be confusing, say we get rid of this, we execute that, they're called cells, we execute that cell again. A still exists, so don't forget that you created a variable. Obviously, it's really obvious right now, but if you were working on this for like an hour and you had deleted something a long time ago, and now you're trying to wonder, you're like, why does A still exist? And why is this happening? It's because it still is saved in the kernel. So no matter what we have here, A still exists. Another thing, so we have A equals 3. Let's just be clear to have that B equals 3. Then you can do A plus B, 6. If you do A plus B here, you can see that it doesn't automatically execute them, so you have to, a good way of breaking up like tasks. So it's, I think the goal, obviously they call it a notebook because it's like replicating a notebook. You're working on one part at a time. So a big thing that people use Jupyter for is its flexibility with plotting, or like the ease of plotting graphs. It can't do it on its own, so we need to install, we need to use pip again to install the plotting libraries. So the most popular one, or one of the most popular ones, and most supported is this matplotlib. It's named that because it's supposed to be replicating MATLAB plotting. So we will install that. It's pretty big, so it takes just a minute. So you see that it doesn't have the notebook running anymore. So the connection failed and the notebook's not running anymore. We can restart it and go back to our notebook, which is in the same state that we left it, where I deleted everything. So it even saves the output though. So some things you can do to clean it up. You can cut cells away, so it's better. So we'll import NumPy as NP. So NumPy is the primary way of doing number processing in Python. If you have large data sets, or even like, they don't have to be super large, like just anything. It's just the best way to do it. And then matplotlib.pyplot as PLT. The stuff with matplotlib is kind of confusing, so we're not going to talk too much about that. Like, why does it have to be pyplot or pyplot, and what exactly can matplotlib do? We just won't worry about it too much. So we'll generate some data using NumPy's randomness. We're going to make it normally distributed. So we'll do normal, then we can just specify the size. We'll do 1,000. And we'll do a histogram. So this is matplotlib at work here. And we can do a histogram of that data. Oh, why did I type NumPy after I changed it to NP? So it automatically plots it, where traditionally you'd have to do a PLT show and things could get kind of complicated. It can kind of be a pain. But so X, the nice thing is X exists here. You don't have to say it again anywhere, and then you can be like PLT dot, I guess we'd need some Y data, huh? I'll just make it the same thing. And this just means make circles instead of making it a line graph. So use the X from up here and then the new Y, and it plotted the normally two-dimensional normal distribution around 0. There's something else. Oh yeah, so one thing, back a little bit about Jupyter. We kind of got in on some matplotlib and number analysis here. So on Jupyter, we'll stop the kernel again, stop the notebook. So accessing this, there's no password or anything. So there's a way where you can put a password in front of it. So first you have to do Jupyter Notebook -- generate config. And so I did this earlier, so it's asking me if I want to overwrite it, and yes. And then it's pretty simple to create a password. It's just password, and I'll just make the password today. So now when I start my notebook, it brings me to a password screen. So we'll close this other stuff because it could get confusing. So then I just type in that password I just made, and now I'm authenticated. So the nice thing about that is if you're hosting it not just to the computer itself, if you're hosting it, say you have a server running a Jupyter Notebook somewhere, and you don't want anyone to be able to open your code. So then here's the thing in the state that I left it. And the nice thing is it's even in the state where X still exists. Oh, that might be different because of, yeah. But if the kernel keeps running, okay, yeah, so X still exists. But say I close this, I'm leaving everything. And then I can go localhost. Oh, that was cool of Google to do that to me. I'm still logged in, and things are what they were before, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So it saves it as long as this is running, as long as the notebook is running. There was one other thing. Oh yeah, I was gonna mention just the kind of stuff you can do at the top here. You can move cells around, you can copy, you can merge cells. So I have these two cells and I'm sick of executing them separately. I can just merge, and so then I have one cell that executes at the same time. And importing a bunch of time doesn't hurt anything. Well, maybe it does, but not Downside, if you had to find one here, is true. Like normally with Matplotlib, it'll pop up its own window if you're running this just on from the terminal. If you're running Matplotlib commands from the terminal, it'll just open up its own graph, and then you can like zoom in and move the graph around and look at features, and then you can save the graph as like a PNG. But here, I guess you could save the image as something, but you can't zoom around and look at things as you might usually want to. You can do things like setting the limits, like so you could like set X limit, something, something, something. I forget the exact thing, so I'm not going to mess with it, but you can do that if you really want to look at a specific area of your plot. So the kernel is like the thing that's saving all the variables. So if you're in a bad state and you don't care about losing things as they are, like say I got rid of, well, like how I got rid of my Y. I think, no, Y probably doesn't exist anymore. No, Y doesn't exist. But say I got rid of my X here. And I don't care about losing it. I could restart the kernel. All variables will be lost. That's okay. Because I broke something. I don't know. Sometimes things can go wrong and things can get really confusing when you have bigger projects. And so, anyway. So the kernel is the thing that saves everything. And down here, so the reason it says Python 3 is because that's the kernel we're using, but Jupyter supports more than just Python. So you can have kernels for, Kelton mentioned like Ruby and probably JavaScript. Yeah, like any script, like any interpreted language, I'm guessing, like the popular ones, I should say. I haven't looked into it too much myself. So we can log out. I didn't save, but that's okay. Wait, it's making me re-authenticate. I wanted to show you guys what the we'll show a different one, uniform. That does numbers between 0 and 1 uniformly. So I wanted to show you what the notebook actually looks like. So you can actually just Command S from the screen, or Control S, whatever. I'm on a Mac right now, but Control S, you can just use that to save quickly, so it doesn't mess with you. And then over here, it tells you that it's saving the file, and it also tells you like what kind of activity is going on. I got forbidden because I needed to sign in again because of the authentication. Yes, we would like to kill the kernel. RIP kernel. So in here we have the Python notebook, the notebook that's actually like existing there. So since they saved the image, this is that plot. This is how they save the plot. And then here's the code that was sitting in that cell. And they talk about cell types. We can go into cell types a little bit. And then they talk about the kernel that was in there, that kind of stuff. So let's start it up again. Sorry, I keep stopping it. I'm still authenticated, apparently. One nice thing is insert cell above. Okay, so we can switch this cell to any of these things. So I'm not familiar with the heading one. I've used Markdown to do my headings, but let's see what heading does. Oh, well, this is Markdown. Okay. So if you're familiar with Markdown, it's what you do when you're doing like a README and a Git, like for GitHub or GitLab or whatever. So there's like special syntax where you can do like tables using these things and whatever. So heading. And then you have to execute it and it becomes that, and then you can double click on it and edit it. But what is kind of annoying is if you want to run all the cells, you have to run the Markdown. Like if Markdown's sitting in between all your cells, it like jumps to the markdown. So I'll show that here. Okay. Thanks for the notification again. Heading 2. So say so it's shift enter to run things. And then you have to, it stops at the heading one, which I would prefer it to just jump to the next, like if I had more code down here, I'd prefer it to just jump to the code, but I have to execute the markdown again, unfortunately. But that's okay, because I can just click around, but clicking's kind of annoying. You can put line numbers on so that it's easier to read. You can get rid of that little toolbar. Myself, I don't actually use this very much except for changing the type. So it's kind of nice to just have these things. Another nice part about notebooks is that you can commit the notebook to like GitHub and push it there, and it knows how to parse it. Like it appears in notebook format. It doesn't, I can show you what I mean. Wait, why did GitHub do this to me? Oh, I didn't click on GitHub, that's why. Myself. So here's a Jupyter Notebook that I have committed to GitHub. Takes a second to get through it all. So here's like the headers, and then all the different cells of execution. It also saves the images, so you can see all the plots as the state it was when I saved it. So it's easy to share. It's easy to plot things and look at things quickly. I don't know. Downsides would be, it might not that, I don't know. I can't really think of any significant downsides from traditional coding except for having to execute a lot of cells, which can be a pain. So that's pretty much everything I have. There's not a lot of people here, so we could just talk freely if you have any questions. Like use cases, or could I use this here kind of stuff?
Use it for like vibration levels. It's posted for other people to connect to.
Yeah, but I don't know about, they have warnings about that because lost updates can happen. So like, it's not like Google Drive where you see what they're doing simultaneously as they're writing it, because things have to get written to disk. So yeah, it's not, it'd be collaboration in the sense that I did something one day and then like maybe the next day you can like work from there, but not simultaneous or concurrent, I guess would be the word. That would be cool though. I bet they're thinking about doing something like that.
Probably.
A lot of things do like concurrent editing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just really nice too, like if you're working on a group project and you have like a notebook, you could email it to someone, and as long as they have Python set up on their system and Jupyter, literally all they have to do is open it up and it's already like all set up, and if the output is saved, you can see their output.
Yeah, it's like the saving of the state of the notebook is really convenient. Like this, like this is just what I committed to get at one point, and I don't even use this notebook anymore. I have a second notebook in here that I'm using because this one's kind of a mess. But yeah, it is annoying because like say I wanted to look at this graph, it's not very good like at this distance. So like the zooming thing is pretty important sometimes. So that's like one of the biggest drawbacks I've found with it. And of course, if you have like some binary like executable that you execute and generate some data, I mean, you could do that technically through like one of the cells, like do like a system command, but it's generally more convenient to just do it from the terminal. You can set it up though. Other than that,
Any other questions?
that's all I got.
Yeah, you're good.
All right, I will. Goodbye, chat.